Stephen Auger, and this is Earth Haven Farm.
I'm Eric.
Eric's my son, and he's the key farmer here. Is the opening prayer. This is something that Rudolf Steiner wrote, so whenever we do our teachings, this is the poem that we pass around, and each person will get a turn reading it.
He's like the forefather of
He's the forefather of biodynamics. So we can go.
1924.
Yep. So we can go and talk about biodynamics.
Yeah. Before we, actually, I think we should talk about this a little bit.
So, like I said, in the first, so biodynamics, come on in. I'm just going to shut this door. At the time, he had already established Weleda, who you might know as the German pharmaceutical company.
Oh, yes.
So Weleda was based on a farm. It was all natural. He created it along with another woman who did all the herbal tinctures and all that kind of stuff. So that was his background in farming and the connection to the land. He'd also met a few spiritual people that told him working with the land and being one with the land was key for the future and what was to come. He also was an architect. He built the Godiatum in Germany and a number of other buildings that are still exist there. And his what he is noted for in his architecture is non-square corners. So staircases are circular, rounded. You don't cut pieces of wood off. You leave like the natural weaviness. A lot of like stucco, so that you can mold rounded corner doors.
Was that to represent like flow?
Yeah, exactly. So the other thing that he's noted for is the creation of the Waldorf schools, which is based on that children will all learn at their own pace and end up at the same place where they need to be. That children need to be in nature. Children also need to learn responsibilities and chores. So in the Waldorf school, when they were starting the Waldorf schools, it was very key for the Waldorf school to have land, which was an anomaly for most schools because they were, especially in a city environment, there's the school next door to, businesses or whatever. So if you go to the Waldorf school in Toronto, up in Richmond Hill, they had quite a big piece of land, which they've now sold off. But behind that school was land where they could have goats and pigs and sheep and a few, like a little kind of a hobby farm setting. So the premise was that the children would come into school, and before they did anything, they had to go and do chores. So from age 7 to 12, so you had kindergarten, they didn't have to do the chores, but from 7 to 12 was the age where they needed to learn responsibilities. So by having sort of a little petting zoo kind of farm, they weren't looking after hamsters in a classroom. This is like rabbits and goats and stuff out back and chickens. They had to feed them, water them, clean their pens and their stalls and whatnot. Then they would come in and they would do their lessons. The older kids from 5 to 12 also did cooking, and they would learn and cook, and they would feed the younger kids and whatnot. So they learned culinary arts and the importance of food and where food came from. They also had gardens. They were growing their tomatoes that they would have at lunchtime and stuff like that. So they would learn nutrition. So that's what he believed that children should learn. That would be, and putting mathematics and reading into the whole
active process,
so that there was no pressure on children. So if you had a child that struggled at reading or math, they would learn by assimilation, and the other children would help them along. There was none of this bullying. It was not tolerated, no putting people down. So when the children were ready to go into high school, they were already there. And the proof is actually in there. They've done studies in Europe where the Waldorf School education is very, very well known, that those children are far much more prepared for college and university and high school even than most of your regular kids coming out of Catholic and public schools.
like it's working on people's natural talents.
and really showing people the interconnectedness between all things. And I think when we can see it from that full aspect of wholeness, we can see where we fit into the chain link.
Exactly. And I mean, if you go back a few hundred years, like Little House on the Prairie, okay, those kids had responsibilities. They had to come home, and if the priority was being at home that day, there was no school, right? Learning how to cook and clean and repair things and carpentry and the hands-on stuff had far much more value. Today, those skills are the only value kids have nowadays is this.
And interdependentness.
Yes.
Like every family member, someone's looking after somebody. Whereas today we're not.
No, and you have...
You're in a car, in a van full of kids.
Yep, and you had...
And no one's looking after anybody.
Right, and you had community.
So it's community.
It was farming. Like I said, Eric and I have been praying for community since we moved here, and community has never manifested, and it's probably one of our biggest hardships.
Not yet.
Is that the weight?
Not yet.
Is that the weight is on the two of us to make this work, you know? And there's nobody here in working with us in harmony.
And
Well, we're hoping this is what brings awareness to all of this.
Right,
What
because
we're talking about.
So getting back to what is biodynamics.
Yeah.
So biodynamics, the actual translation from Steiner's work is bio is like biology. It means life.
Yeah.
Dynamics is forces. So you're working with the life forces to grow food, to create a home, to create education. But so biodynamics, with working with those forces, incorporates the water, being aware that water is alive, that soil is alive, and you work with that. We're not trying to change it like Big Ag is doing. We're going to change you. We're going to take the hedgerows away. We're going to control how things grow. As a biodynamic farmer, the first lesson told you was awareness. So as a biodynamic farmer, we do exercises to get the person to connect to their little plot of land and identify what is the heart of their farm. When you understand what the heart of the farm is, then everything grows from there. And the heart of the farm could be out there in the field. It could be the space where all the activity happens, like here between the house and this building and the greenhouse and the barn, where you've got sort of that heart mind, right? Where things that's where you start your manifestation. So that's sort of the beginning part of biodynamics. Step 2 is we start right off into working with the soil, because the soil is everything. And if you talk to Eric, what we do here at Earth Haven is we grow soil.
Interesting.
So the cows, to Eric, if you asked him, where's the heart of the farm? It's the cows. About the cow, why the cow is important. If you really start to understand the cow from a biodynamic standpoint, you really start to understand why the Hindus and the people from India,
I just got that.
Why they consider a cow to be so sacred. So I'm going to show you something.
Interesting.
So here's my lesson with horns, and this is why the cows are so important to the farm. So this, so that's basically a horn in a nutshell, and you can see that it's hollow and it's got a spiraling bone goes up inside there. Okay, the outside shell, this is all silica, which is the same thing as your toenails,
right,
and your hair and everything. Okay,
Mineral.
yeah, so that's really, really key. So this is the inside, and you can see how porous it is, and again you can see all the spiraling probably in more detail. Okay, so this is a female horn. So this is the horn after the bone has been taken out, and this is a female horn. And what I want to show you, this is really, really key to biodynamics and the sacredness of the cow. The female's horns point up. Okay? From an energy standpoint, what is that telling you?
As above, so below.
No. That the female energy is divine, feminine, connected to the heavens. Okay? What the female horn does is it's pointing to the heavens. It's bringing in the energy from the cosmos into the horn, down into the ground. And only the female can do that because her horns point up. And she is about nurturing, mothering.
Yeah.
You got it? You know where I'm going
Yeah,
with that?
Mother
Okay.
Earth, Mother. Yeah.
This
So neat.
is a bullhorn. Okay? The bull's horns, if I were to put this on my head, where does it point?
Downward.
It's pointing downward. So the male of the cow is about what?
Grounding.
Grounding.
No, defense. His job
Protect.
is to protect the herd.
Right.
Okay, that's the male energy, protection, awareness. He's the bull's horns are down. He's constantly looking where the predators are. He's protecting the rest of the herd. That is his key duty. Okay, whereas the feminine is above. So, and when Steiner talks about the horns, this is where we only use the horns from the female cow, because you're wanting to bring in the nurturing female energy that we use in the biodynamic preparations to put out on the land. Because we want gentleness, we want balance, right? Imagine if we could spray preparations in our own homes to change the energy. So the other thing with the cow horns is that the cow horns, the blood runs up into the horns. It cools the cow in the summertime and it heats them in the wintertime. The horn is directly connected to the lymphatic system of the animal, be it masculine or feminine. So this is where they get their immune system. In commercial farming, they take the horn off
Yeah,
the
I
cows.
was just gonna ask about that.
Yeah.
So
that's
the
true.
horns are taken off the cows, and this is for herd management. So when you put more animals, and this is where Eric was saying it's about herd management. So what we do is we keep the herd into a happy herd. To keep a happy herd, you have to keep the numbers down so that there's no fighting and no bullying. When you bring that energy in, you've also got to shift from the feminine energy as well. So, and each cow, like us, has a circle of comforts. So you will see if that circle of comforts gets, if I get into your space and I stay there too long, what do you want to do with me? Tell me.
It's a little uncomfortable.
Right, and you want me to leave. Well, the cow is the same way, okay? So all these things that I'm talking to you about with the cow, think about it from a human standpoint, and then you'll find out why the cow is so sacred. So the cow has, be it masculine or feminine, has this circle. And when somebody else gets into their space, they bully. So if you've got a large herd with a bunch of horns, and this is a horn off of typical cows. So these are off of Scottish Highland cows. You can see the difference. Even that horn can do damage in a close proximity. So what the feedlots do is they will put up to 100 cows in one field. So the fighting and the bullying goes on. You've got bills to pay, right? Also, the human looking after them doesn't want to get hurt. So that's why they pretty much take all the horns off the cows. The cow, typically when you dehorn a cow, it is done when they are a calf and it's burnt off.
Wow.
So that just doesn't grow.
That
So
would
that-
explain why if we eat that kind of meat, though, we're taking in that
Yeah.
energy. That's
What ultimately happens to the cow when you take their horns?
If you take a horn off of a full-grown cow, it will bleed to death.
Oh
Well,
no.
when for the because if that's their immune support, right, and that's their temperature regulation and stuff,
Exactly.
they're taking the horns off of the cows
Exactly.
for
So when you listen
factory
to
farming.
you
So what
listen
happens
to the
to
commercial
the-
from A&W that says we
Yeah.
raise cows that are antibiotic
Yeah,
free,
right.
the answer is that's bullshit.
Yeah. 'Cause they would have to be fed medicines without that.
Absolutely.
There's no immune system.
There
left.
is no immune system.
So
Because that's
A&W doesn't keep
lymphatic,
their
they're gonna
horns?
be-
A&W doesn't keep their horns?
It's factory farm.
It's
still
factory
factory.
farming. It's
Yeah.
factory farming. The same thing happens with your chickens.
Yeah, same.
You have quota, and the quota is 1,000 birds. If you have 1,000 birds to meet quota for eggs production or meat productions, those birds are in close quarters and they have to be fed antibiotics.
And they're injected to grow fast.
Yeah,
Fast grow something, I forgot.
birds are extremely dirty, and once they're in close quarters like that, there is tons of airborne diseases that birds will get.
And they'll peck themselves to death.
Sure, they will, and they'll peck at each other. They are remnants of the dinosaurs. They are omnivores. They will eat their young. They will eat each other.
I guess one of the main concerns is, everyone I'm sure would love to do biodynamic farming, but how many people can you feed?
You can't.
When you
It's not about the masses.
It's not about the masses. It's about quality.
Community and
So
family, I guess.
one of the little phrases that I love in biodynamics when we get to lesson 10, which is about food. So by the time we get to lesson 10, we are actually taking samples of the food that we've grown. We've spent the last 10 months growing our food, becoming aware of biodynamics. So lesson 10 is about taking the food that we've grown, and we basically put together a potluck and we taste the food. And at the end of the day, what we are growing is food vitality.
Yeah.
We are not growing food to fill the belly, to do this. It's
more life force.
changing our vibration through food. And there is a book that talks exactly about that, and that's this one here, where we talk about growing food for vitality. Totally different concept. So big ag farming is about supplying the grocery store. It's supply and demand. There was an old movie that Charlton Heston was in called Soylent Green, where everybody was basically at the end of the movie was revealed that they were eating each other, and it was just we call it like a pipeline of food, like almost like our dog food, where it comes out in an extrusion program. There's no nutrition value, it's just the basics to keep you alive. And that's kind of where we are. So there is no money in biodynamic farming. There is in Europe because there's support for it.
Yes, there is.
Because you have smaller communities, and they are aware of it, and those smaller communities want the farmer to feed them. And it's not just Eric and I cannot feed the whole community, but if there was another farm like us that could complement us, and another farm over here that had a little bit of something different, between the three farms we can feed thousands.
Well, let's manifest that. I think that's something that we want to bring awareness to.
Yeah.
So when we get back to the cow and the sacreds of the cow, the other neat thing about the cow, and this sort of feeds into the calendar which we use in biodynamics, is the cow, being divine feminine, menstruates every 28 days, exactly like us. The female cow in biodynamics, again, when you're creating a healthy herd, the premise is you let the cow wean on her own, which is what we want to do in our own divine feminine. We want our little one be with us. It's up to her to decide. In factory farming, a lot of the calves are taken away from their mothers as soon as the farmer sees them eating grass. Boom, gone. So the other thing is that the cow, the manure from the cow, is pH neutral. It's like a magic soil. And that's why we use it in the biodynamic horn preparations, is because that pH balanced manure, when we stuff the horn full of it, and then it sits in there for 6 months of the year, it digests, has a magic relationship with the silica, and it absorbs the silica. So then when we pull it out, and Eric just did it, we just posted a video on our website of him pulling the BD500 out of the horn, and it was all full of mycorrhizia, just full of it.
And so does that feed the soil? Okay.
So the other preparation that we do is we actually take the quartz crystal, and it's ground up and it's put in here. And again, Steiner found that it had a unique relationship with the horn, and it digests. The silica. So you can see the difference
Quartz
between
has a lot of minerals.
this silica. So this is a horn that's never been in the ground. This is a horn that's gone in the ground a number of times, and you can see how the silica is actually broken down. The other thing too is that the horns that we use in biodynamic preparations are all from a cow that's had a baby, and the horns have birth rings.
Oh, wow.
So the buffalo horn that you saw in the greenhouse, it had look for the birth rings to find out how many calves that cow has had. This one here is hard to tell because it's so broken down.
A lot of modern agriculture, the soil is depleted. So even a lot of the food that we're eating, we're missing nutrients. Magnesium seems to be one of the huge ones as well. Now, what's the difference between that, doing all this work with biodynamic farming? Is that really going to help us as a society, like with all those nutrients that you're putting back in the soil? How does that all...
It takes a long time. Eric can probably answer that question better than I can, but when you take a piece of property like this, Eric and I have been here, we moved here in 2006, so we've been here 13 years, and we've been using biodynamic preparations since the get-go. And I think that we're just now starting to really see how the use of biodynamic preparations on a long-term basis is actually manifesting itself here. We can see the difference, we can taste the difference, and people that come here and eat our food are tasting the difference. Whereas 5 or 6 years into the process, we really didn't notice it, and I don't think other people noticed it. But it's huge now. And again, this is why the cow is so sacred in India. And why it is so sacred to biodynamic practices is because it is neutral. Everything works with it. When somebody says, well, all I've got is horse manure, all I've got is sheep manure or cow manure, well, you can work with that too, but you can't put it into the preparations because it's not neutral. So if your only source of manure is, so on the manure scale, horses, goats, and sheep, their manure is alkaline, so it sits over here. Chickens, poultry, and pigs are acidic. They sit over here. They're not neutral. They will not work in the horns. They will produce a toxic
so it's
environment.
fully balanced then.
Fully balanced. So in our manure pile, if all I had was chickens and pigs to work with, I have to put in a lot of brown material, which is wood chips, branches, leaves. Okay, so it's stuff that's really woody because the acid mixes with the wood to break it down. If I have horse and sheep, I want to add a lot of green. So grass clippings and hay and stuff like that is very, very important. If you have also manure piles that sit on either side and it's not cow, they need to sit longer. An actual manure pile made out of cow manure can be ready to use in 6 to 9 months if it's done properly.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So when you talk about big ag and all their chemicals, even a small farm like us, if we have our cows and we're using our manure properly, we have enough to nurture our land. There's no need for chemicals. There's also no need to till your soil out unless you're doing like the vegetables. That's the only reason that you really need to till your soil.
And what about when you're dealing with pests and stuff? How would you prevent them from...
So pests we deal with, companion planting is number one. That's huge. Working with the natural bugs is another thing. In biodynamics, what they'll say is like plant a row of carrots, okay? And all of a sudden the bugs will come in and they eat this patch, and this patch here is fine. A farmer that's not aware will go, oh, I got a whole pile of bugs there. I'm going to pull all of that out because I don't want them to eat them. Then he comes out the next day and the bugs are moved over here. So in biodynamics, what we realize is that there's something wrong here, that plant is sickly and the bugs have come into it. leave it alone, let the bugs completely digest that.
Mhm.
Okay, so the other thing is rotations. Okay, so Eric can get into that. When we do garlic, for instance, we'll plant garlic there, and then it gets planted over here the next day. They're heavy feeders. Corn is another heavy feeder. Potatoes is another crop that a lot of people get the potato bugs, and they want to spray them. So the solution to that is to not plant the potatoes where they were planted the previous year, and again to do the companion planting. And Eric can talk more about how we deal with pests here. Was the question?
Come on over.
Did you guys want to burn sage though?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any dried stuff. This is just I grow it in the greenhouse, but
I usually start.
this is fresh, so it's not going to burn very
Beautiful.
well. I figured that would,
Get Eric to answer the question while I go get sage.
Which
Thank you so much. That's nice.
Yeah, it's fresh, so it's not gonna. I'm surprised it's actually got a little bit of a.
Yeah, man.
Oh, that's nice.
I'm sure. Yeah, my girlfriend, she has 2 girls, and they smudge all the time. So I grow it, so I give it to them all the time. So looks like it to me.
Is that a seashell?
I think it's wormwood. It's most likely wormwood. So wormwood is part of the sage. Most people.
Oh, that's
It's
nice.
hard to tell.
That's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I'll hold it.
Thank you. What? Okay.
Just put it outside, I guess.
Yeah, so companion planting, rotational planting, and then we do herbal sprays, which Eric can talk extensively about, and which ones he uses for which different
Are
things.
those like an herbal tincture that you make up?
Yeah, so mint tea, we'll do like a big pot of mint, and it gets sprayed on certain things. We'll do stinging nettle tea is another one we use a lot.
That's amazing.
Why aren't they spraying these chemical companies? Like,
There's that heavy feed. So the question was, how do we deal with pests and not doing chemicals and stuff?
Well, first off, it's just creating a good relationship with everything that's around you. Beyond that, allowing yourself, with numbers, if you're planting a garden, to grow more, so allowing, loss if you're going to take it, so that you can actually give something that's, looks nice for people that like things that look nice. Yeah, it's tough when you're having to make money off a garden. You have to look at it in a different way that's not holistic. And so I'm taking probably more than I need to, and that's where I started, was giving back. And that's my journey from way back when. But yeah, it's giving back. So happy cows mean happy soil. Happy soil means happy plants that grow from that soil, and then happy fruit, and then we eat those, and we can be happy too. Yeah. That's kind of how that cycle starts. So when you start with that, you start with soil. So when I first came here, I wanted to build soil. So how do you build soil? You get whatever animal you can, ruminants, so dinosaurs. We had triceratops, and massive amounts of shit all over the place, right?
yeah.
So they were always giving back as they were taking massive amounts, right? So I think the problem with our system now is going right back to colonialization and coming here and deciding that we need to put boundaries on. Like my mom was talking about how these people came and put fence rows up. Like that, you can look at it in a proud way, or you can look at it in like, why are these even here? Like, all it is just when you have a flow of animals that are supposed to be migrating, they end up brushing up against a barrier, and then they have to go around. You know, sometimes our barriers are now roads, so you know it's a death trap, right? So it's a stop of flow, and you know, the scientists that are studying the coyotes and stuff and whatever, we're seeing that they're stopping in a very abrupt barrier, right? So I think that's the main problem with what we've done, is we've decided, oh, we own property, we own this, and I can choose what to do with it. So I could buy this property, put a bunch of pavement on it, and make it a car lot, whatever I want, right? You know, whatever I see is all that matters to that property because I own it. I think that's a huge problem, or that's where it all starts. I think when it comes to soil erosion and everything, it's, you know, we've decided that I own it. So, yeah, and the native people don't really understand that, and it's obviously got us into the situation we've gotten ourselves into. But, yeah, that's a roundabout way to answer that question. So, if you want to go back to mitigating pests, so using different sprays. So when you use the 500, what are you doing? You're trying to spread that energy out over a massive amount of space with very little. So you're not exactly forcing anything to be what you want it to be. You're allowing it to be exactly what it needs to be, and enhancing it in its own.
And the 500, what is the 500 again?
The 500, I guess, is the horn preparation. So
Okay.
500 is manure placed in a horn, buried under the ground. And so it's placed in the horn in the fall, and then dug up in the spring. And then the 501, which is the silica preparation, which is the quartz crystal ground up, put in a horn, is the opposite. So one is the in-breath, and one is the out-breath.
Okay.
One is light and one is dark.
see.
Yeah, you're in tune with the life.
Duality and
Yeah,
Yeah.
all that
So
stuff.
you bury
So
the quartz one in spring and dig it up in the fall.
So it's sequestering the light energies from the
Right.
summer, okay, when the sun is bright and we have the heat and whatnot. So the quartz crystals also grow deep in the earth, so they've already got that relationship with the earth. And then the manure, again, is the cow, the divine feminine, and it goes in, and it's we're wanting to constantly build upon that gentleness and the nurturing of the cow. So the winter time, as Eric said, it's when we go in, and that's when we contemplate. We think about what the growing season was the year before, what we're going to do the next year. That's where we contemplate everything in our life, is those winter months where we go in and hibernate, so to speak. So the feminine cow manure in a feminine horn in the ground is really nurturing that divine feminine so that when you dig it up in the springtime, it's jam-packed with all that energy. Okay, so the biodynamic preparations are also, we apply them like homeopathic. So if you understand homeopathic, where less is more, and that's the whole premise of biodynamics. So when Eric says we spread it out, we're spraying it out in minute little molecules that hit the soil. So, and that's why I said we've been here 13 years applying the biodynamic soil. So we've got an accumulation from year after year of putting the horn in the soil, you know, contemplating over the winter time, and then digging it up, and then applying it, and another year of that, and applying it in minute quantities. So it's a process of building up that energy, and the same thing with the horn silica.
And were you saying it's taken about 5 to 6 years to see the results?
I think
you see the results.
you see the results if you're conscious enough, but I think we've been here long enough that we're really sensing it and feeling it, and other people, when they come here, feel it. 5 years into moving here, I didn't see that. I didn't feel that people were feeling it when they came here. People do now.
So it sounds like you're in the start. It's gonna start.
So there is a little story that Biodynamics loves to tell, and it's about Chernobyl. So Biodynamics is huge throughout Europe. And when Chernobyl went off, they did this monitoring of what was going on there for years after. And this is about 5-6 years after Chernobyl went off. They were doing flyovers, and they were monitoring, and they saw these green patches that were different than the other greenery around. They sent ground crews down to find out what they were. They were all biodynamic farms.
I watched a documentary this winter about that, and then they showed even some of the animal, I guess even the bugs started to mutate from that over time. There was mutations from it.
Yeah.
But that,
I always hope.
yeah, and it was just, nature is powerful. Like,
Yeah,
a blade of
like-
grass breaks through concrete. Like, this is,
Life always finds
it
a
always
way.
finds
Yeah,
a
finds a
way.
way.
And if you leave it alone, it will heal itself. And the man was walking on. I just, yeah, it was. I forgot what the name of the documentary was, but it actually talked about Chernobyl and.
So what happens with people that have been doing research with biodynamics on a long-term basis, like Hugh Courtney down in the States, Aaron Fried, Pfeiffer, these are big names in the biodynamic world that have spent lifetimes doing research of what biodynamics actually does, and it's over a long period of time, is exactly what Eric and I are starting to feel. It's an energetic thing. Aaron Fried Pfeiffer does a neat test on paper, where he'll take food that's grown in the factory, and we actually did it 2 years ago. We had a teacher come and do it. And you take food that's grown in the grocery store, and then we actually submitted our own food grown here. And the difference in the colors and the spirals was phenomenal, just phenomenal. You
That
can
would be
see the
amazing to
energy
see.
on paper. So these guys talk about that, and they talk about the buildup of the energies from different things. So in biodynamics, there's also a whole set of preparations that we use that we apply to the compost pile. And so we get back to the number one thing of what we do here on Earth Haven Farm, and that's growing soil. And to Eric, building compost. His compost pile is that's one of the key things that he
Just
does.
temperature this morning.
Yeah. So
Choices as a collective, not as individuals. And I think we're on a track that's, it's a wild ride.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we're bringing more awareness. This is why we do what we do.
Yeah.
So the planting calendar is multi-leveled, and it's the if we talk on that 10 lesson class scenario that we give in biodynamics, the calendar comes into about the 4th lesson, and we build on that. So each lesson we talk, the first one is awareness. So by the time you've got to lesson 4, where we start talking about the planting calendar, there's a fair amount of awareness and acceptance that you're working with the whole universe. So in the scheme of things, the closest influence that we have to the earth, there's 2 elements. That's the sun and the moon. So the sun gives us, as we rotate around the sun, it gives us the seasons. It gives us hot and cold, the night and the day. But the moon is a very, very powerful force, and it affects the watery influences of the
feminine
planet,
energy.
and it's the feminine energy.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have the tides, you have the in and the out breath. We have that monthly cycle. So again, the cow on a monthly cycle, humanity on a monthly cycle, and the moon on a monthly cycle. 13 months of the moon, divine feminine, right?
Yeah.
So the moon also is not just affecting the tides of the ocean and whatnot. It's affecting all the water that's right here on this land base. Like there's no water around us, but the moon is affecting the push and the pull of the water that's in the ground, that's in the air. So as it was explained to me, that as the moon rises to full moon, it's pulling the water up. Okay? So, and then when you reach full moon, the water is at its peak. The moon starts to come down, the watery forces go down. So from full moon to new moon, as the watery forces go down, and they go deep, 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 deep down in the earth. So at new moon, That is when the watery forces are at their lowest point. It's in that 4 days on either side of new moon that the watery forces churn around way down there with all the minerals and that not, and then they start to rise up. So as they rise up, they start to release the minerals into the plant world, into the roots and the soils and the grasses. And then as they start to come up here and they rise above the surface, they become like invisible. So it's like moisture in the air. So that's the water recycle and relationship to the soil and plants and growing.
That's amazing. And you guys teach courses on this.
Just got a customer.
And is this something that can be taught to just anyone that wants to have a little small plot of land that they
The
want to
majority
take
of the
care
people that actually come, because it's hard for us to get farmers, because farmers have their plot of land, they don't want to come out and give up a whole day to come out and learn. So the majority of our students are actually backyard gardeners, hobby farmers. That's our target audience. In the scheme of things, the Biodynamic Association globally, their mandate is to convert farmers to biodynamics, and it's our toughest job. And because we've been approached, can we do it through podcasts? Can we do it through distance learning? But how do you teach sensing through videography, unless somebody can actually come out, like Eric, take your shoes off and come out here and earth with me. We're going to walk through the plants and we're going to see which ones are being attacked by bugs and which ones are not. You're not going to get that in that classroom work. So our dilemma is, how do we teach this and how do we get more people on board? So right now, it's the target audience is, again, this younger generation that have no property, that have no land, that desperately want to grow and be a part of it. They're the people that we need to be getting here as interns.
Yeah.
And that's not happening either.
That's a segue to the question I was gonna ask, is how often, apparently you have volunteers that come.
So we have 2 people right now with us, a couple from France. They've been traveling around the globe, spending 2 weeks here or 3 weeks there at different farms around the world. That's typical of what we get. That's tourism to me. And you're not going to learn anything. You're going to learn a snippet here and you're going to learn a snippet there and a snippet here, but you're not going to get everything from working in the greenhouse, starting the seedlings, trimming them off, and then transplanting them, nurturing them, mulching them, weeding them, and then harvesting the food, taking things to market, reseeding, all that. You're not going to get the full gamut of everything. Then things come into harvest. So you've got like lettuces and spinach and stuff. And onions, we can probably get like 4 or 5 plantings of stuff like that. Corn, 1 season. Tomatoes, 1 season. Your berries, your apples, 1 season. And everything has a cycle. So if you're only here with us for 2-3 weeks, you're going to miss out on apple harvest. You might have got berries, but you're going to miss out on tomatoes and all this other.
Do you have eggs anymore?
I have no eggs. Sorry.
So when you are looking for people to come and volunteer, are you looking for like a certain season, a certain amount of time?
Or even type of people?
Right now, I take whatever I can get. And I've had a run of people that, it's actually been nice. This year has been different because it's just been Eric and Emily from the get-go. We've had a number of people that promised that they would show up and they didn't. This is the first help that we've had this year, honestly. And it's the end of the season.
And for people that come from out of town, are they able to, like if they were to stay for a season, is there a place for them to stay on the farm? Or?
Yeah, we have 2 trailers.
Okay.
The one over here is, there's a fireplace in there, so everything is heated with wood, including the trailers. This is a new trailer over here, so we haven't really figured out a heating system for it. Most people, if they're coming from the season, it would be April or May. May is good enough, through to October, because October is when we bring the last of the harvesting, which is the corn. And we don't do sweet corn. We do a traditional indigenous corn, which is your flour corn.
Is that with all the different colors?
Cob? We have that, but we're doing the white corn.
Okay. Okay.
And it's ground up into a flour. And we actually do that by hand. Eric's got a little bicycle thing that he ground up, built, sort of invented. So to come for the whole season, that's where you learn everything. That's where you're working, doing biodynamic preparations. You're going to be burying things with Eric. You're going to be digging things up with Eric. You're going to be spraying them and applying them. In the springtime, we go out into the forest and we do wild leeks. You know, if we had more help, we could do all kinds of stuff.
What a great way
so
to
magical.
give back and learn about something that's going to help elevate our world too, right? And is there anything that you can't grow biodynamically?
No.
And what do you grow here? What types of things do you?
Well, we do most of it's the market garden stuff. Hay is another one. We have to have hay for our own animals. So the pastures are all treated with the biodynamic preparations. So again, healthy food, that's that life cycle. So the animals are eating healthy food from the pastures, and then they're shitting on the pastures. They bring the manure back to the barnyard here, and then we put that out into our vegetable gardens. So our key thing here, what sustains us, is the vegetable garden. We take that, and that's our income.
Yeah.
If you come here as an intern, we don't have the money to pay people.
Yeah.
That's a roadblock.
Yep.
There are grants to be able to pay people, but you fall into the government system. Once you do that, then you have to pay WSIB and insurance and stuff like that. And Eric and I are just like,
Documentaries I've watched, I binge watch. Like, they know that the land isn't producing. They know that the land is becoming dead and
We're
overfarmed.
raping it.
And
The
so they
soil.
must. Has this association even? Have you ever been able to?
I was at the slow food
Make
movement,
inroads with these people.
in Italy last year. And
Okay.
Canada we didn't even have a booth.
didn't even have a booth.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah,
What does that say?
at the slow food movement, and even the States, they didn't have anything. I ended up since with my heritage, there was this one group called Turtle Island. And I was just like, all right, well, there's new people. I might as well just hang out with them. And then that was great. So we all had, it was indigenous people from the Americas, right? So, yeah, it was great. And I was just like, I felt at home with them, but like, you know, if anyone
Just
ever-
over time, I think
what?
there is.
It's got to start from the bottom
It's
up.
what's going to happen is, but they are, and you have mentioned that they are noticing that the land isn't producing like it was, and I'm sure at some point there will be crisis where they're
Well,
going
that's
to
the thing,
turn
it's
back.
the way
Hopefully, the
it
pendulum will
works
swing
before.
back
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. Well, we already
this.
we already
Long time.
are in crisis.
We are
and
there.
we talked about that right at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Where, like when I was growing up, there was you never heard the word diabetic. You never heard autism. You never heard depression and anxiety.
And women are infertile now more than ever. The fertility rate has actually dropped. It's funny that you even mentioned it because it's a thing in North America.
So we are
So-
in a crisis situation. It's just that again, when we're talking about awareness and coming into the light or a higher vibration, you know, we think that we're growing in those numbers, but it's very small. The majority of people are still disconnected, going along with the flow of what society wants to dish out at
I
them.
think it's this awareness that's going to help.
I think people are searching because
You
when
know,
I talk to people are searching and they're looking and they want to eat cleaner. There is, I don't know, like
There is a movement.
people are
towards
talking and they want, where can I get better quality food? The cancer rate is up in Canada. It's 1 out of 2 now. And like that, you know, we got to look at what's going on.
Yep, and
The
cancer.
farmers are dying too. Like, I've had a ton of my mentors and people that I really look up to. They're all just like, look, I'm out. There's no one here. There's nothing here. Nothing's like going on. I've been at it since these people started since the 80s, right?
Keep going.
And before that, they've done
going.
it because their parents were
Okay,
doing it
there
in
you
the
go.
60s, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's always been a very small group. I'd say we're definitely like, even the customers that come to the market, like I go to the Brickworks markets downtown Toronto, I would say just the ratio of people that are actually aware to come every week are, you know, 1 to 2 people. So, you know, and those are the people I love, and those are the people that I just like hold on to because they're the ones that know, here Eric, I'm here, what do you got? I'll just get whatever you eat. But of course they help out all the other farmers and go to the other farmers markets and from a city person's perspective, you need to go out to those places that are available. And one thing that's always been traditional all across the board in every large city is the farmers market. It's the place where
And where do
can get
you guys are at the Brickworks? When do you guys go? Every Saturday?
every Saturday for the past it's been 12 years we've been going.
And what's the time on that?
Every Saturday from 8 o'clock till 1. Yeah.
1 to 1. Okay.
Yeah, we're there. Been there all the time, and in the winter time, I still go in the winter time. I bring my Lego machine, try to inspire imagination. That's really fun too. I'm trying to keep that program going.
I produce the tomato sauce and stuff. We have preserves to sell at the table. We got my daughter's crafts that get people off of plastic. We have that to sell in the winter time as well. So it's not just produce, because we don't have fresh produce all winter long.
You gotta be creative, especially when you're living off of your own means.
And then there's flow farms.
Yeah,
What is it exactly that flow farms are? You were kind of bringing that
So
up.
flow farms is something that Eric's got going on in the greenhouse. It's energizing water. So
That was amazing.
You've heard of Emoto, where you take
Yes.
the card and you can energize water by just putting a thought form to it.
Oh yeah.
So you can
Yeah.
do
Dr. Emoto.
Emoto.
And the rice thing.
Rice and all that stuff. So flow forms is another version of energizing water. And this is something that Rudolf Steiner paid close attention to, because he was very conscious of energy. He was also a visionary, and he knew where the humanity was going to where it is today. So in nature, water has patterns as it flows. And
Everything has patterns.
everything has patterns. So these are some of the patterns that he noticed.
Oh wow.
So these are like eddies. When water flows, it creates these things, when the streams flow, waterfalls flow. What he noticed, if you ever go by a waterfall, that everything is lush. So that it's getting water from the moisture in the air, but that water that they're also getting from, whether it's the airborne water or the water that's hitting the roots, is it's got oxygen in it, and it's got the minerals from the rocks and stuff in it as well. So when Steiner was looking, well, how do I take that to the garden? Then he started working on these flow forms. So he started working on patterns and creating these these patterns. And out of that came the molds. So there's another one there. So
So
see?
this is what the water would cycle through.
Yeah.
Does it create more oxygen within
Yeah,
the
so
water?
the water flips and it turns and it flows. So if you were to take it three-dimensionally, the water is folding in on itself. It's turning over top of itself, and it's doing this as it's flowing down the river, right? So he says, well, how can I replicate that so that I can use energized water in the gardens? And this is something he wanted to accomplish for his Weleda pharmaceutical farm, right? So he created these molds, and they look like this, and they get extremely creative.
Oh wow.
So this is what Jaspel wants to come here in October, and he's got a mold that he brought back from India with him that he wants to build here on the farm. When we first moved here, I tried to get a mold, and the only place I could get it from was Australia, and they would not ship it to Canada or the United States.
Well, I made my own.
And Eric made his own. He did it out of clay.
I was gonna say, what would be the material? So clay.
So you
yeah?
can make them out of anything. So some of them are made out of ceramics. You can see that they're all different. These ones here, they sort of replicate lily pads. But again, the water flows in, it goes around circles, it will go through another hole, and then it will go down another circle. So the water is constantly folding in on each other. And then this is what Jaspel did in India, similar to what Eric's got, is it flowed into a big vat where it would mix with other things, minerals and stuff that he wanted to put out on his soil. So it's cool. So there's an actual mold for some of these ones. So that's what he wants to come. This is a simple one. It's just got maybe 3. So it looks like a flower. And then it comes into the final one here that would go out and go to the gardens. So that's what he'd like to, and I'd love to get him to come and actually do a workshop while he's here.
And now, so you guys use It's called a
Flow form, yeah.
When did you guys start using the flow form?
Well, Eric was introduced with the flow forms when he did his internship. The flow forms, they've got four pieces and things flow. So this is another thing that makes the cow sacred, is the fact that it's got 4 stomachs, and everything that's digested does the same thing as water. So when it comes out, you've got the rippling effect. That's really cool. There's another one here. So you can see how the cow manure is actually energized by how the cow eats and how it comes out at the other end.
I never thought I'd be interested by cow crap, but like, it's very cool.
So this is sacred shit. And then when we both did the course with Titsia that I had mentioned, the flow forms was part of one of the lessons, and it's about energizing water. When I went to Santa Fe, New Mexico, there's 3 groups that were there that are working with different ways of turning water using copper, because copper has an energy.
Yeah.
And Eric's actually got a piece of twisted copper that he did himself that's hooked up to the water trough for the cows. So the cows are drinking energized water that goes through a
amazing.
twisted copper pipe.
And does that help with life force energy? Is that, yeah.
Yeah. So you know what the benefits of wearing copper all around your wrist and stuff like that. So having copper energized
Is
water.
it with circulation and such? Yeah.
It's good for the female body
Yeah.
or system.
So and just because the water is flowing through it too, the copper is staying clean in the process as well, right?
It's very interesting.
No wonder why when we go get spring water, do you remember that time?
Yeah.
We went near us.
And it
Everybody
tastes so
lines
much
up to
better,
bar.
too.
It comes out of the spring and it tastes like this is
So when
this
you're
is
drinking,
not the same water
when
as
you're
the tap
drinking
ever.
that spring water,
unbelievable.
It's energized
rocks
through
and,
rocks.
yeah,
It's mineralized. It's
And it's
oxygenized,
filtered.
and
It's
filtered.
so
Naturally
unbelievable.
filtered, not
But you can
chemically
taste it.
filtered.
Yeah,
When we
it's
got it that
really
one time, you
nice.
came with us, right?
Yep.
We filled
Yeah.
tons of it.
So
It's just like this
when
water
you talk
was
about
so
crystals, how do you clean your crystals? You
That
either
would
put
depend on the crystal itself.
But you either put them in sunlight, moonlight,
Moonlight.
or the ground.
For
You
me,
put
yeah.
it, and that's how you clean the energies and stuff off. So, and that's been passed down from way back. This is what they want to do. Them
And it's also
gives them taste. What we have is tasty sweet meat.
And it plumps them up
Pumps
faster.
them up. A
But
cow
if you have corn
cannot digest
sensitivity,
the amount of
which
grains that
we
they're
do,
being fed.
I
So by
do.
the age of
You
2,
eat it, it's in the
they
beef,
have
like you have
toxic
a problem,
gut.
right?
They
You have a
basically
problem with digestion, so
exactly what we
Yeah.
are getting now with
interesting.
gluten intolerance.
Right.
Okay. So at the age of 2, the cows are being sent to the butcher. They're not even allowed to fully mature. A cow, the lady that inspired us for the Highland cows, she had a cow that lived to be 24 years old.
What?
And birthed at age 20. Her last calf was born when she was 20 years old. And she said she made a promise to that cow. She was telling me that it was going to live out its lifetime. That was one of her first cows that she got when she came here from England.
Yeah.
I think it was a baby from her first cow that she brought over. And she said it was going to have its forever home.
So the methane gas that's coming off of these cows, is it because they're eating things that are not good for them?
no, everyone.
Everybody,
fart.
It's the
farts.
excess amount. It's the excess amount of what's coming out of them. And they're also now linking the foods that we feed the cows in feedlots to a lot of the things that we're experiencing, like diabetes and obesity and stuff like that. Because we're not even supposed to be consuming the amount of corn and grain that we consume, or the amount of meat that we consume, or
Sugar and salt.
it's a really small
Not balanced, right?
variety of food that we eat in abundance. That we should be eating a large abundance of
So your cows are all grass-fed?
all
then?
small
Grass-fed,
things.
grass-finished.
Okay.
Like actually.
Oh,
So
wow.
they
Getting some
So
meat
the other
today.
thing too is in
That's why I like to charge
biodynamics
more
we
for it, but
try to If
There's a guy
anybody
that
is
feeds
really
us,
hardcore
he has a
biodynamics, they
specific
want
type
to
that he
produce
feeds on
happy
beer.
meat. That means
Oh, no
that the
way.
He
animal
gets like
does not go
$400
into the
a
butcher. Most
steak
butchers will
and
want you to
stuff.
bring the
Yeah. I'm
animals
just like,
in the night before or the day
wish I could
before.
get, like,
They
you know,
sit.
Beer.
So the
a tiny
animal
bit of
has
that.
been taken from here where
Wish I
they're
would
happy,
appreciate it like that.
they're comfortable.
Yeah, beer.
They
He
go
just,
into a
ferments
pen
beer.
with
So no,
strange
but even
animals
with, like, I mean, look
that
at the
have other
restaurants that are,
diseases or whatever. There's the bullying
they're
thing
sourcing
going
very high
on.
quality beef. They're charging
Butchers
what,
don't like us
$100 for a
in that
steak or something
environment,
somewhere.
period, because we have the
I'm pretty
animals
sure
with
they
the
want-
horns, so the other guy's animal's going to
Well, I
get
can't.
stabbed.
Did you guys
My
feed
problem
them
is the supply.
So they're
they
stressed
always
out.
want a consistent
When an
supply,
animal
so
is
they can-
stressed,
so
they're
I'm not a
tense,
big
just
feedlot,
like
so
we
I
are.
can't
True,
supply.
The
true.
meat becomes
That's why I
tense.
don't get along with
And
the
that's
chefs,
what you're
because they're
eating
always like,
is
"What can you
meat
give me?"
that's
And I was like,
been
"Well, I can
stressed.
make it
Yeah.
Okay?
All right, I want
So
that for
when
next."
Eric sends
And then
the
I'd say, "Well, I
animals
can't
to
do that,
the
sorry,
butcher,
it's not happening."
we make the
Same as,
appointment. The
like, the
butcher
big
knows
carriers
that
in
we're
Toronto
coming in
and,
there. He
Joanne's
also
place
knows that
in
we're
Peterborough.
coming in
Yeah.
here and we
They've all-
want
I
our
talked to them
animal
and
dealt
they
organically.
can't get on board
So
with
they
a
have
model
to.
that is more
um,
fluid.
Our
Yeah.
animal has to be the first one on the floor.
Yeah, I
So the
just
guy
like to
comes
have
and picks
phone
up our
calls and just
animals
do it
between
myself.
5 and 6 in
And
the
it's been
morning,
working.
so that the first thing
But,
that the
it's tough.
butcher deals with, not the night before.
Yeah,
Kobe
Joanne's place
beef.
wanted me to come.
So
and
everything's
give them
done in a
product.
better
Yeah.
And you can taste,
way.
you can
They wanted me to
taste the
bring my
difference.
difference.
Yeah, we've dealt with a butcher over here that's local, and we've got the meat back, and it's
Yeah.
tough and it's chewy, and it's like, so what is this guy doing? Because he just doesn't
So,
care.
yeah, the
He
markets
just
are good
doesn't
for us.
care.
That works well.
That's amazing.
cat-
I'm
Yeah.
actually thinking
There's,
of just doing a Palo trail from now on, 'cause-
Yeah.
'cause
Highly
I-
sought after beef that comes from Japan. I just learned this at the restaurant that I work
Yeah.
at. And their cows are like
they
doted
beat them?
on,
I think if I do the
doted
Palo
on,
trail, I can
and
actually
they're
help my
like
people and inspire
killed
them.
humanely and stuff like
Oh,
that.
okay.
And it costs a lot of money to
Is that the
to buy
Kobe
it.
beef?
I've tried it.
I'm not. No, I'm not 100% sure. I'll ask them again.
I have people
Because
coming
there's one
in.
where it's, and there's an adrenaline.
So the Kobe beef is very gently. That's why it's so expensive. They
That's the one.
really
Okay.
are very gentle with them, and even the
Yeah.
way they slaughter, right? The Kobe,
Yeah.
So
Well, I do
that's
the
why
same thing. I brush all mine.
they're not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the way
have
they're
them.
slaughtered is how you'll taste it in the meat, right? The adrenaline's not in the meat.
Oh, that's what it is. The adrenaline's
If
not
they're
in it.
like
Yeah.
the way they're, I don't even like talking about it, but like yeah,
Yeah, we were just talking about that.
because
so.
the way they're actually normally done, it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
not humane. So
And a lot of religions, like the Muslim religion, stuff like that, they have to pray and comfort their animal before they slaughter it.
Yep. Yeah, and the slaughtering is usually done by
it's
a
halal, right?
priest or somebody
A rabbi
that's more
or- yeah.
spiritually connected, and he
Well,
just
I've been
quietly, I
taking the blood
believe
of
they
The halal
they
is
bleed,
also
slit
like
the
a.
throat or
There is
something.
somebody
Yeah.
that's involved
And they
with the.
comfort them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't,
Yeah, they
if the
cut them
animal
and leave them
doesn't
a
calm
certain
down,
way, yeah,
you can't eat it.
Yeah.
You can't kill it.
Yeah, and it has to be done by a minister
Yep.
who's more of
So if I
what
was a
they
cow, I
consider an
wouldn't be killed.
enlightened being.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Yep.
sometimes nervousness is effective when you're not
Aw.
trying to be killed.
This kitty went down.
So we can
Oh, no.
venture out this way. It doesn't look like the cows are going to come up anytime soon.
You might be coming.
So we can come back.
They're not ready.
Well, it's nice out. They don't like the sun, right?
Yeah,
So
the
they
sun
usually-
is nice.
They would be in the barnyard for sure if the sun was out.
Oh yeah, they're out there.